Seems like the world just can't wait for us to finish. Until we all end up dead.
Man, just shut up and shoot dope.
Appetites, apparent disbelief, promise of pain, without a God. Unity now corrupt, Messiah makes a rust, dead in the public eye. Down the lost, lamps of being. The light of the last night. Make this movement failure, annihilate the savior, deviate the maker, word is cast aside. In the public eye, dispel the fate of human times. Wisdom bound to silence, pushing his defiance. This movement failure, annihilate the savior, deviate the maker, word is cast aside.
Welcome to the Dreams of Consciousness podcast. If you'd be so kind, would you mind introducing yourself?
My name's Dennis Muñoz. I'm the guitar player for the band Solstice from Miami, Florida.
And how would you describe the music of Solstice?
Well, our music, it was originally a mix of death metal and thrash with some, hardcore, like New York 80s, 90s hardcore, all in a mix.
And aside from Solstice, you've also been in a number of other bands in the Florida area, right?
Yeah.
Do you want to mention what those are?
Well, as far as Florida, not too many known ones. I've done projects with other friends' bands. Like I don't know if you heard the band Rape Tape. They kind of had a thing for a while. I was also in Demolition Hammer for a bit, around 94, 95. After the record Time Bomb, I was a live member mostly.
So I definitely remember Rape Tape. Rape Tape became Pain God for a while, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So maybe we can talk about that a little later, but let's focus on Solstice for now. So as you mentioned, a mix of death metal and thrash metal. You guys were mostly active at the beginning of the 90s, right?
Yeah, we were active from about 90 till 95 or so. And then we kind of went our separate ways, and, we did other projects. And then about, I don't know, maybe 03, 04, we kind of got together again with the intentions of writing new Solstice. And, we started, auditioning, going through a couple of people to see if they fit. And we actually ended up finding Chris Rhodes, our second guitar player vocalist. And we started writing for a new record, one after, took us about, I don't know, 15, 16 years to write a new record.
And that was the To Dust album.
To Dust, correct, yeah.
Let's talk about the early days of Solstice. At the time that you guys were active, or in those early years, that's when the Florida scene was booming. What do you remember about that time?
I remember, like a lot of bands, a lot of shows, a lot of places where, bands could play. A lot of band jumping, a lot of, everybody was in everybody else's band back then, That's a lot of the stuff that went around, in Florida. Anyway, we used to hang out in Morrisound a lot, the recording studio, because we had a lot of friends in Tampa. And that's how, it basically went. We were always up there, or we had friends from up there down in Miami in the South Florida area. And it was great, man.
What originally brought you guys together?
Well, me and Alex Marquez, the drummer, we started the band. When we were like in our early teens, I don't know, 14, 15. We were still in just going into high school. And we played, like our first metal band was with him and Tony Choi from, Cynic, Pestilence, Atheist, all those guys. So us three, we formed our first kind of like really thrashy kind of metal band. And, that didn't really take off or anything. We just, because Tony ended up joining Cynic a little while after that. And we ended up looking for a guitar player. And, our friends in Cynic, which used to rehearse, just a few doors down in another warehouse, they introduced us to Rob Barrett. And Paul brought him down to one of our rehearsals, and we hit it off and we started jamming.
So I spoke to Paul and Jason from Cynic a few years back,
right?
And they talked a little bit about the Miami scene. I think when people think of the Florida scene, they really think of what was going around in the Tampa area. Would you say there was a difference in intention, or maybe the way you guys looked at music based in the Miami scene?
You mean a difference between the Miami scene and the Tampa scene?
Yeah, like were you guys more musical? Did you have a different intention when you guys were playing music?
I don't know. I don't know if I could actually say, that we were more musical. I mean, it was there, there were a lot of bands in the Tampa area that were, more technical in a sense, more musical than what was popular with Obituary, even though, Obituary's amazing band, they're kind of, they were known to be slow and simple and long songs. And, but then again, in the Tampa area, not exactly in Tampa, you had Atheist, which is a very technical metal band, death metal band. And you also had bands like Epitaph, which was a band that's the singer guitar player ended up in Cynic. And, so the diversity there was, it was wide. It was, there was a lot of very musical bands that were technical, and same as Miami or South Florida.
When you guys were formed to do the To Dust album, what brought you guys back together?
Well, I don't think we ever intended on it being like a reunion or anything. It was just, you start playing riffs and you start, jamming, and all of a sudden something comes up and it's like, well, this sounds like it would fit Solstice or whatever. And that's how it starts, just a little spark like that. And before you know it, you have a few songs, and we started jamming, me and Alex. And then we kind of found our old bass player again, Garrett Scott. And we started, writing a few songs. We wrote a handful of songs, and that's right around the time where we got in contact again with Chris Rhodes, our second guitar player vocalist, and he had moved away, but we were able to, to make that happen, sharing files over the internet and whatnot.
Did you find that the industry, or maybe the way people took in your music, had changed between the early 90s and the late 2000s?
I don't know. That's That's a hard question, but I mean, the album To Dust, it was seen. I heard more than once, quite a few times actually, that it was more of a death metal album as opposed to, the mix that we were known for, which was, mixing death and thrash equally.
I mean, I think between like Solstice, Rape Ape, even Demolition Hammer, you guys, that thrashy death sound, or thrash metal with death metal influences, I think stood out from what was happening at the time, which was really the emphasis, especially during the early 90s, was much more on death metal, and that's what the labels were really looking for. Did you feel any pressure internally or externally to change your sound or to adopt a more traditional death metal sound?
No, not at all, man. I mean, if we would have tried to write just straight death metal, which I love and Alex loved and Rob loved, it wouldn't have sounded, I don't think it would have been genuine. Our sound came from, all the influences from the early thrash bands, Slayer, Metallica, whatever, but Celtic Frost is, list goes on. But our thing wasn't writing, just, I don't want to say generic death metal, but that style, which is easily identifiable. I think it was a very natural thing, and mixing the genres the way we did and the way people say we did was a very natural thing.
So after the To Dust album, you guys did some touring. I actually saw you with Master and this death metal band called Hellstorm Annihilation, and I saw you guys. Yeah. And I saw you guys when you played New York, and that was when you guys had Ryan Taylor singing. Were you guys active during that whole period between To Dust and when you were touring with Master?
All right, so we did a few live shows after To Dust. We did the Central Illinois Metal Fest, and we did a show here where I'm living now in San Antonio, Texas. That was like a really big festival type of deal that was put together here. That was in, say, 2011, 2012, around that time. And we kind of, it was just a handful of shows. We kind of parted ways again. And I was living in San Antonio then. I ended up moving back to Miami in 2013, around that time. And before I did, Alex was telling me about, that he had seen this kid, Ryan Taylor, that his band had just, broken out on the scene over there. His band Atomic, there were just a bunch of young kids fresh out of high school or probably still in high school. And, I was planning on moving back beginning of 2014, I would say. And so we began, we as soon as I got down there, we started jamming with Ryan, and everything went well. He's a great kid. He's an amazing guitar player, vocalist. And we started rehearsing to go out on the road. We did a US tour, and then we did the first tour we did was with Hellwitch, which is their legendary Florida band. I don't know if you heard of them. We did a tour with them, and then we did the Master tour the following year. And then after that tour, we did Europe. So we had been pretty much active since, say, about 2012 up until now, even though, we didn't release the album until, just recently. In
the period between To Dust and you guys working with Ryan, your first two albums were re-released, right?
Yes, they were. Target Group or Emancipation, they're going to pretty much release our entire catalog.
Strip time. Spain will be the price of pain. Sing off the back of the road and
What I remember from that period, I mean, I didn't specifically know Solstice had returned in 2009, but I knew that during that whole period there was this retro thrash and retro death metal revival where a lot of classic bands were coming back together.
Right.
It seemed like there was a new kind of respect for a lot of the old thrash stuff that maybe didn't happen during the 90s. Did you feel that?
Oh yeah, absolutely, man. Namely Demolition Hammer. You know, we stayed in contact with those guys through the years, you know, Derek and Steve. And we were trying to convince them to, you know, come back on the scene, you know, do a new album or do a tour or do something. I'm sure people would have been, you know, dying to see those guys. All the neo thrash bands would always mention them as an influence, you know, and they weren't really convinced. And it wasn't until we played at Maryland Death Fest in 2015, or was it 16? 15, yeah, I think so. And we invited them down there. And that's when it actually hit them that, you know, that they're relevant. They're still relevant, you know, to this day. And they were able to regroup, and they got themselves a new drummer, and they did a bunch of touring from like 2016 on. And they kind of, which is really cool, they kind of credit us with, you know, helping in making that happen.
It's funny about Demolition Hammer. Like, I've always liked that band. But when I got the CDs from Century Media, when I ordered the album from Century Media, I got them for like $6 or $8 brand new, just because, you know, nobody really cared about that band 20 years ago.
Right.
You know, they're just trying to get rid of their backstock.
Right.
And now when I go to shows and go to festivals, like, you know, there's so many kids wearing Demolition Hammer t-shirts and hoodies and stuff like that.
Right.
So it's great that people came around to like Solstice and Demolition Hammer eventually, but sometimes I get irritated because like people who heard about that band like 5 years ago will argue with me about whether or not they're really a death metal band or whatever. You know what I mean? It's like, man,
right.
Like, nobody cared about this band 20 years ago. Why are you arguing with me?
Yeah, I mean, that's the reason. I mean, that's what they thought too, you know, but I mean, we were trying to convince them for, you know, all those years that, you know, there's a lot of bands that are out here now playing, you know, your style that you were doing back in 91 and shit. And they're pretty much, you know, bands like, I don't know, Warbringer, which there's a handful, but, you know, it was a lot. Bands that, you know, credited Demolition Hammer as an influence and kind of sounded like them. And, you know, we were trying to show them that, and they finally saw the light.
So let's talk about this new Solstice album. It's called Casting the Die, and it came out at the end of April. Is that right?
May 7th, actually, it got postponed a couple of weeks because of a little backlog there with vinyl and stuff.
Okay. Tell me about your intentions going into this album.
You mean like before we wrote it or before we recorded it?
Yeah, like when you were writing it, like what were you guys hoping to do with this album?
Well, I mean, you know, since we started jamming again, when we got Ryan in the band, we did a lot of rehearsing, and, you know, stuff would come up, and, you know, so we felt like we could probably write an album relatively quickly because, you know, Ryan, he's like a riff machine, you know, so he can pump out, you know, songs or mostly finished songs in no time at all. And, you know, he's got a great feel. He's got a great style. And we all had ideas, obviously, but, you know, we felt like we could do it relatively quickly. So what we ended up doing was getting the touring out of the way, because there was a lot of people that would, you know, contact us and saying, when are you guys going to tour? You know, I heard you guys are back together. So we wanted to get touring out of the way before we recorded. And that's what happened towards the end of 2016, like late 2016 is when we played our probably our last show. Central America, I think we did like Panama and Costa Rica, and we actually did Peru. And after those shows, it's when we kind of settled down and said, okay, let's write the album now. And like I said, man, we were like already prepared. We you know, each of us had music that we jammed, and we collaborated, and we added, and we jammed some more until, you know, eventually we we had over 10 songs. We were shooting for 10. We ended up with 11.
Did you feel any pressure to live up to those early albums or to top them in any way?
No, I would say no. There was no pressure. I mean, we felt like we had really good material, which was reminiscent of like our first 2 albums, and we were happy being in that space, where our friends would come over and hear it and go, yeah, man, it definitely sounds like the new stuff could fit somewhere in there, and Ryan's vocals are similar to Rob's. That's what everybody was saying, and obviously we thought so too. So I can't say we felt any pressure. It just kind of flowed. I mean, writing the songs was easy. Recording it was easy. It didn't take us long. So, it was pretty laid back. I wouldn't say there was really any pressure on us to produce any kind of an album one way or the other.
When did you guys actually start working on it in terms of writing music?
We started working on it, say, mid 2016, and we were probably ready by September of 2016, and that's when I believe that's when we started recording it. We took maybe a month or so, a lot of sessions, but it was, like I said, there was no pressure. It was in my studio in Miami, Florida at the time. So, we were just prepared, and we went in there and took care of it, man. It was something that it was an accomplishment, and we didn't, like I said, we didn't really feel any pressure, and it flowed pretty well. Probably at that point, we'd probably been as tight, musically as we'd ever been. Did
you record and engineer this yourself? Mix it yourself?
Yes, it's recording, mixing, and mastering by me.
I mean, as the engineer, as the producer, what was your approach to this album? Did you want it to sound like the old albums? Did you want it to have a more modern sound?
I would say yes and no. I didn't want to. Obviously, I'm recording all in digital now, so nowadays albums sound, it's basically drum samples and amp sims that you get, and stuff like that keeps getting pumped out day after day. So we didn't want to make it sound like something modern. We want to kind of to stick sort of like if we were, recording it on tape, not try and, like time-align stuff or, just digital trickery. We didn't want any of that stuff, So I think we were able to do that. There's even, like if you listen really closely, you might, find a couple mistakes on the album that just it didn't matter. It was like a natural mistake and it didn't ruin anything. So we just leave it in. We thought we'd just leave it in just for the hell of it.
And you've recorded most of Solstice's music, right?
I recorded To Dust. I didn't mix it. And the new one. And also I did a remix of our second album, Pray.
And was this the first time in the studio with Ryan?
Yeah, first time with Ryan. Although I had recorded, he had a project in Florida named Combat, which I recorded an EP that they put out like in 2015. So it wasn't the first time I recorded Ryan.
Sorry, did you say that you recorded the sound back in 2016?
Yes, that's when we started recording. Fall of 2016 was, when we actually went in there and started laying down drums.
Okay. I'm curious, why is it only coming out now?
Well, the original plan was to record it, get it packaged, and find a label. But things started happening. I ended up moving back to Texas, which is where I'm at now. That happened at the end of 2017. So, and by the time I got over here, the album wasn't mixed yet. I started mixing the album when I first got to Texas in the beginning of 2018. Let's see. I mixed it in maybe a month because obviously there was no rush. And then, when it was done, the plan was still to package it ourselves and release it ourselves, and then, look for a label, look for anyone interested in releasing it. And I believe in sometime in 2019, we got in touch with Michael Anderson from Target Group, Emancipation, and we worked something out to have it released by them.
This is all that food, suffering. Time passes while I'm back track. Taking back, tied up by no restraint. Tied up by no restraint.
Tell me a little bit about Emancipation, because they're new as a label, but they've been involved in the metal scene for a long time, right?
Yeah, apparently, man. I didn't really know a lot of them myself, but doing research, they have a lot of the old metal bands that kind of like European, like Tigers Pang Tang, which they're legends. Obviously, they have Mike Tramp. The label's Danish. Mike Tramp is a Dane from White Line, and I thought that was pretty cool. I loved White Line back in the day. And I bragged to a few friends of mine, like, hey man, I'm label mates with Mike Tramp and Tigers Bang Tang, so I thought it was pretty cool.
I mean, that's the funny thing about how, we've reached a point where death metal, none of those bands are selling particularly, like they used to in the 80s, but
right.
Death metal has reached a certain point where it sells consistently, and so you can put a band like Tigers of Pantang next to Solstice, and economically it makes sense. I don't know if the fan bases necessarily would gel, but
right. No, I agree with you, and I think that's a lot of that has to do with the European market. There's always been more of an acceptance for metal over there. Over here, you got to be very specialized, I think, in the States. But if you break through in the States, you're going to break through in the world. But the bands over there have always had, or the fans have always, have very, diverse tastes. And, that's, if it weren't for the European fans, I don't think we would have made any kind of name for ourselves, in other words.
We spoke a little about how there are a lot of bands that are forming that are taking influence from Solstice, Demolition Hammer, bands like that. You guys formed in 1990,
right?
And you're releasing your fourth album now. How do you think you'll be remembered? Like, what do you think your legacy will be?
I don't know, man. That's a good question. I've said this a couple of times, how we've had fans that have been with us since the very beginning, that bought the demo when the demo came out, when we were like, sending it out in envelopes, stuffing a tape in an envelope and sending it out all over the world. We still have fans that, that tell us, yeah, I got your tape because of, I saw the review in Metal Forces. And, some of them will say things like, your first album reminds me of kind of like Slayer, Rain and Blood, the way it hits, because it's a very short album. It's very impactful to them. And, we get a lot of praise in that way. And at the same time, you have fans in the same genre who have never heard of us, so I always find that comical. It's something that's like, it's very flattering to hear stuff like that from fans that are, that have known us from the start. And then, it's comical when you hear the fans in that same genre that like those same kind of bands that have never ever heard of us,
But I think in a way, like bands like Solstice and Demolition Hammer, you guys were a little bit both behind the times and ahead of the times. I don't know if that makes sense to you, but at a time when the focus was really on death metal, you guys were doing something different.
Right. No, I understand exactly what you're saying. Yeah, and I agree.
And so it really took it really took almost like 20 years for the audience to come around to. There's a new generation, and I guess Ryan is a part of that, who kind of looked at metal as a whole in terms of the history and not specific genres as being cool. You know what I mean? Like when I was getting into music, I was getting into to death metal, and then black metal became popular. And some of the friends that I had who were who got into music a few years after me, they weren't interested in death metal at all, and their focus was entirely on black metal.
Okay.
And I think from like the kids that I meet these days, when I say kids, I'm in my 40s, so people like 10, 15, sometimes 20 years younger than me. But
right.
There isn't really a big distinction to them in terms of like what's a death metal band, what's a black metal band, what's a grindcore band, what's a thrash band. You know what I mean? Like they kind of come to all this stuff in the same way. And I think Solstice benefits from the fact that kids these days are maybe more open-minded than we were when we were growing up.
Yeah. I think you may have a good point there, man.
So Casting the Die is out now through Emancipation Records. Dennis, tell people how they can order the album.
You can order directly from Target Group, Emancipation. We have a link through our band Facebook page, and that's facebook.com/solsticefl. And you can also, if you're in the States, you can order the album from Miami Metal Merchant. He's a record slinger based in Miami, and he has stock of the album, and he'll get it to you for U.S. prices. Now,
do you want to say anything about the vinyl versions?
Oh, right. Yeah. That was something really cool that Michael Anderson from Target, he told us that he told me to pick out, colored vinyl that we were going to do like a limited run. And I thought it was really cool. They look excellent. We got our demo pressed in vinyl, the first two albums. And soon, near the end of the year, we're going to have To Dust reissued and a live album, which was recorded in Leiden, Holland in 2016.
And did you say that there are plans to release the first two albums on vinyl as well?
Yeah, absolutely. They are presently out on Emancipation. We have the first two albums, and both of them have the limited edition colored vinyl, and we have To Dust coming at the end of the year.
So you mentioned your Facebook page. Are you on any other social media platforms?
Yeah, I believe we have an Instagram that's run by Ryan mostly. So he posts a lot of silly stuff on there. And I think that's about the extent of our social media.
You guys have a Bandcamp page, I should mention.
Yes, we do. I'm sorry about that. Yeah.
Or I guess Emancipation has a Bandcamp page where people can order the albums.
Right.
Yeah. So, with the pandemic and, the lockdown and everything that's happening, most bands' plans for promotion are limited. Are you guys able to do anything? Like a live stream or anything like that? Well,
we are apart once again. I'm living in Texas. Ryan still lives in Florida. Our bass player is in Florida. Alex is living in Arizona right now. And both of us, me and Alex, both moved away at the same time. So we haven't done anything since 2017, I guess it would be. But we are planning to put together something for Europe in 2022.
Do you have time to talk about Rape Tape a little bit? Yeah,
sure, no problem.
Just because I used to see that name in the distros,
right?
Back when I was like, looking for bands and whatever. And I only really got a chance to hear the band, whenever, I guess around like 2009, 2010, whenever everything started ending up on YouTube. But that was another band that, was maybe lost in the, the death metal explosion just because they didn't really fit in with what labels were signing at the time.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. We all of us in the band thought they were amazing, man. And, we played a lot of shows with them back in 89, 90, 91, maybe. We were all good friends. And they were one of the tightest bands you'd ever see live, man. It was amazing. They were tight. They were on their game, and they played often, which like just about every 3 or 4 weeks they were doing a live show in South Florida. And we played a couple times with them, and like I said, we would always go to their gigs if we weren't playing with them, and they were just amazing, and they're amazing till this day.
Are they still, obviously not playing shows right now, but are they still kind of active?
No, they're not. They're not at all. Like Mike Pucciarelli, the lead singer, guitar player, he's a tattoo artist now in Florida. JP, the guitar player, he's doing blues. I haven't talked to him in a while, but I see him often posting on social media about his blues band. JC Dwyer, the drummer, he ended up in Propane for a while, which was a, have you heard of Propane?
Yeah.
Yeah. So he was with them for a bit. And their bass player, Mike, I hadn't heard from him in a while. So he's about the only one that I haven't kept up with. But definitely not. They haven't been active. I take that back. Actually, there's a label called Dive Bomb in the States that reissued one of their demos or one of their albums. And they actually did a live show for that release a few years ago. I'm not exactly sure how long ago, but they got back together for that. Probably just a one-off, but that was really cool. Dive Bomb was able to, re-release I don't know exactly how much they re-released. I don't know if it was just demo or a couple of their recordings, but they put something out at that time, and they were able to get back together and do a show, which was really cool.
Do you know if the name change to Pain God was because of the label?
Yeah, it was because they signed to Century Media, and Century Media told them, all right, you're done with Rape Tape, so pick a new name, whatever. So yeah, unfortunately.
Well, I'm glad I finally got to speak to somebody about Rape Tape.
Oh man, you're talking to the right person, man, because they've been, they're really like one of my favorites as far as the South Florida scene.
Is there anything else you want to say?
Yeah, I'm not sure, man. You told me you're in Malaysia?
Yeah, I'm based in Malaysia.
Okay, and are you American?
No, I went to school in the States for a while. But,
okay.
My family's actually Malaysian originally.
Okay. Well, I would love to visit Malaysia, man. Well, we'd love to, bring the band over there, do a lot of the area there, which I've always wanted to do. We just need a promoter crazy enough to bring us.
So the way it works here is usually if you can find a promoter to bring you to somewhere like Japan or Australia, which is closer.
Right.
Then the promoters in the region, so Indonesia, Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, will kind of team up to cover the costs of bringing the band to Southeast Asia.
Right.
But yeah, man, if you guys showed up in Malaysia, people would go crazy.
Oh, dude, I would love it, man. We have a lot of fans that have, through the years of Southeast Asia in general, they're like, you guys got to come here, man. You guys got to come here. We got a festival. You guys got to play. And we're like, oh man, we'd absolutely love to, man. We would absolutely love to go Malaysia, Singapore, everywhere over there, But well, if you'll like, I don't know, maybe I'll stay in touch with you as far as how to go about doing it. Maybe we can set something up or something.
Yeah, totally. I mean, right now the entire region is locked down.
Yeah,
so,
of course.
We're not allowed to like leave the country, or
right.
Most foreigners aren't allowed in. But whenever this lifts or lessens, I'm sure people will be eagerly trying to book shows again.
Yeah.
But we've got. I mean, it's slowed down a little bit in the last few years, but we've got a huge old school death metal and thrash metal scene here. And so you've probably noticed like all the kids with like the denim vests and the patches and all that stuff who look like they
absolutely, man. Yeah.
Fell off the back of a Creator cover.
Yeah.
So we've got a bunch of those kids here, and every single one of them would show up if Solstice played. So it's doable.
That would be amazing, man.
You should also look into Hammersonic. Hammersonic is the big festival that they have in Indonesia.
Right.
That has a lot of big bands play. Like I know Origin played. Maybe even they had Dimmu Borgir. I don't know, but I know that they bring a lot of bands to Indonesia, and from Indonesia, bands have an easier time like touring through the region.
Right.
So it'll definitely happen, man. Yeah, and let's keep in touch. I can try to put you in touch with some of the promoters I know. Maybe something will open up in the next few years.
That would be great, man. If maybe towards, I don't know, the end of 2022 or even 2023, man, if we get something done like that would be amazing.
Do you want to talk about your studio?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I opened up at the end of 2018, relatively quickly after I got here, and it's a recording rehearsal place. I've done a lot of metal bands. There's a lot of metal here in Texas and San Antonio in general, and it's been great. And it's it's slowly building, and I think my productions will probably take off soon, man. I've done a lot of work.
And you do mixing and mastering as well, right?
I do it all. Yeah, absolutely.
Do you want to mention any of the bands that you worked with recently?
Yeah, sure. There's a band named Aggravator from town. They are on, I can't remember the label that they're on right now, but they've released 3 albums. They're kind of like the neo thrash style, but they're very, very aggressive vocals. It's reminiscent of like early Creator, and you should check them out. I think they're great, and I've done their last 3 records, and they're very notable. I think given the chance, they could really turn some heads.
Does your studio have a website or a Facebook page or anything like that?
It does. I'm on Facebook and I have my own website. It's synergysoundstudios.com. And there should be, if you care to look, my Facebook page has a direct link from there to, my Facebook page and the web page as well.
Awesome. So thanks, Dennis.
Absolutely, man. Thank you.